Hello, my fellow weirdos. People have really seemed to be enjoying taking a walk on the weirder side of the Bible, so I'm back this week with another morning meditation focused on a passage from Scripture that we don't get to hear that often. It's time for another Weird Bible Stories with Pastor Pam. This week, I'd like to head back into the Hebrew Scriptures with a weird story from the book of Second Kings. The story is only 2 verses long, and it's found in 2 Kings 2, and it's verses 22 and 23. The story is about the prophet Elisha, who's not to be confused with Elijah, who we'll learn is also important in this story, even if he's not actually in it. Elisha was traveling between 2 cities, and along the road to Bethel, a group of young boys encountered him, and they shouted at him and made fun of him. "Go up, Baldy! Go up, bald head!" Well, Elisha did not like that one bit, and he cursed the boys in the name of the Lord, and in doing so, called 2 she-bears, which just means 2 female bears, called 2 she-bears out of the woods, which mauled 42 of the children. That's it. That's the whole story. Elisha goes on his merry way, and this story doesn't come up again. Now, Elisha was following in Elijah's footsteps as a prophet, and he was likely telling people about how Elijah had ascended into heaven in a chariot of fire. That's definitely a story for another time. But the boys shouting, "Go up," to him is thought to be a reference to that. It's sarcastic. "We don't believe you. Why don't you show us? Why don't you go up?" As such, some have explained this story away by saying that to insult a prophet is to insult God, and if one is insulting God, one deserves to die. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's more than a little harsh. Should we really defend a prophet for killing 42 children, even if this prophet were the most anointed person of God to ever live? To really understand the point of this story, I think it's important to talk about biblical genres. According to scholars, the Hebrew Bible is filled with all sorts of tales. There are myths and legends, poetry, songs, proverbs, stories, epics, and more. This particular tale is probably not true. Instead, it's likely a morality tale or a fable, not unlike those that we know from the Greek writer Aesop, or perhaps a better comparison, the book of German children's stories that is known as Struwelpeter, which is a collection of stories in which children are naughty or they behave recklessly and end up suffering rather harsh consequences, up to and including death. Most likely, this story from 2 Kings was intended as a reminder to the people of Israel to follow God alone and to honor God's prophets. A reminder that was deemed important enough to be written down and important enough to be included in biblical canon. So, this story of 42 children being attacked by bears didn't really happen. But I can picture it being told around campfires, much like we might tell ghost stories. The storyteller dramatically weaving the tale of Elisha the prophet, who was on his way to Bethel and was stopped and shouted at. Sure, the story he had been telling was hard to believe, and yeah, he didn't have any hair, but that was no reason to make fun of him. So Elisha spoke some words, and the children couldn't really hear him over their shouts and their jeers, but it sounded like a curse. And then, out of nowhere, 2 she-bears came out of the woods and mauled the children. It's a campfire story. It's a morality tale. And I think my buddy here would agree that it's really about God and trusting God and looking deeper into the stories of the Bible and understanding what their context is and what God might be trying to say to us through them.